So welcome you all. Pranam from Buenos Aires, and let's begin with this short Mangalacharan to further arrive to sacred time, sacred space. We are trying to not so much craft together, but become aware that it's an already ongoing reality enveloping us. Om Jnanatimirandasya Janam Janashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Namashreshtam manumapi sachiputram matra swarupam rupam tasyagraham murupurim mathurim gastavatim radha kundam girivaram maho radhikamadhavasam prapto yasya pratitha kripaya shri gurum tam nathasmi. Nikhilashrutimauliratnamaladiti Nirajithapadapnkajanta Ajimuktakulairupashyamanam Paritastvam Harinam Samshrayami Anarpitacharim Chirat Karunayavatirna Kaluhum Shamarpaitamunnatachvalarasam Subhakti Shriyam Hari Purata Sundara Dyuti Kadamba Sandipitaham Sada Hridaye Khandaresh Purato Vastinandanaha Vande Sri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahoditam Godadai Pushpavanta Chitra Samrutamanadam Nilam Bodhitate Sada Svabiraha Kepam Banditam Bandhavam Srimad Bhagavati Kathamadhiraya Sanjeevayam Bhatiyam Srimad Bhagavatam Sadasvanayana Ashrupayanai Pujayam Goswami Pravaro Gadadhar Vibhur Bhuyatmadekad Gati Rasa Ghanamohan Murtim Vichitra Kilimahotsavolasitam Radha Charana Viloditam Ruchira Srikhandam Harim Bande Vrindavaneshwarita Vaiva Padara Vindam Primamritaikamakarandara Sogapurnam Hridyarpitam Madhupater Smaratapamogram Nirbhapayat Paramasitalamashayami Bhaktya Vihinaya Paradhalakshay Kshiptashthakamadityarangamadhye Kripamai tvam sharanam prapanam brinde namaste charanarvindam brinde namaste charanarvindam. Sri Sachinandan Gaur Hari Ki Jai, Sri Harinam Prabhu Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Pramanand Hari Hari Bol. So, once again, pranam to each one of you. Thank you for investing your precious time in gifting your presence to each one of us in today's satsang. I'm still in Buenos Aires at this particular moment in the very room I dared to inhabit for a few decades before joining the ashram, less than a few decades. Now it's my mom's room. She's in the kitchen preparing some sweet balls for a satsang we have later today with some friends here in Argentina today and tomorrow. And that's why today we have adjusted the time of our meeting a little earlier, because if not, we will have to cancel it. So we wanted to meet with you still. So here we are. Thank you for adjusting. And as usual, each of you are invited to bring to the table if you have any questions, topics, things you would like to share, to explore together. Satsang, Sankirtan. We need each other in so many ways. The process is individual and collective, and we want so badly to experience those unique jewels that can only come by communion. mm, by the full alignment or the partial even alignment of our hearts together with the common center. So much can come from that. So each of you is invited, those who would like to bring any offering you would like. So far, I'm seeing 4 raised hands, so I generally invite you to raise your digital hand in advance to have some idea how many offerings we have today. So I administer my time in trying to say something about that in our quest and exploration. So first one is from our dear Hari Vyasadev from Germany, and I assume, yeah, I'm seeing the Mahaprabhu's pictures behind, so I know that room. I've been blessed to sleep at the feet of Mahaprabhu's feet in those beautiful paintings by Kshitir Majumdar, beautiful painter of Gaur Lila and many others. So anyhow, welcome Hari Vyasadev, and please invite to unmute yourself and bring your offering.
Maharaj, nice to see you. Nice to see everyone. I was wondering if you could share a bit. Can you hear me?
I'm hearing you a little strangely today.
Yeah, I hear myself double.
I'm not saying a double, but I'm saying you a little bit. Yeah, I'm hearing a little bit strange, but let's try it.
Is it any better now?
But keep talking because it's.
Test. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can just try. I was wondering if you could share a bit on shadow work. You can't hear me, right?
Yeah,
Maybe
I can.
because Bhakti-rasa was shaking her head. I was like, maybe.
Well, she's older than me, so she had more problems with hearing.
I'm sorry, I don't know what's the issue. Maybe I should ask my question later and I try to figure it out in the meantime.
No. Continue. I can hear you properly. I will repeat your question for those who are old enough not to hear properly now.
Okay. So I was wondering if you could share a bit on shadow work, because I was trying to understand the concept a bit more deeply lately, and I'm aware that you have written about it in your radical personalism. You spoke about it also in your series on the book on YouTube, and I feel like I'm lacking a more practical understanding. I was wondering how do you approach shadow work, maybe from a Gaudiya perspective? Could we perhaps draw any lines between anartha nivritti and shadow work? And I feel like there is something in connection between these two concepts. But on one hand, it sounds like anartha nivritti is being portrayed like an obstacle park. We're jumping over lust and greed and anger and desire for fame. And on the other hand, psychologists are speaking on integrating rather than repressing, rather than abandoning anything that is perhaps darker than we would like it to be. So yeah, I was just wondering if you have any thoughts on how to practically approach shadow work.
Thank you. That's, yeah, a beautiful question, as shadowy as it may be. It's concerning something very important because, yeah, it's though in Gaudiya lingo, the term shadow work may not be as popular as I think it should be. It's still there with another terminology for me, and I try to make that parallel in, as you said in my book, Radical Personalism. We can very easily speak about anartha nivritti and shadow works, and was basically dealing with the same thing. We can speak about one of the very first, if not the very first, invitation of the chanting of the holy name to deal with our shadow, and we can speak in terms of our subconscious mind, which in Sanskrit may be called the chitta, right? The very first result of 7 that Mahaprabhu enumerates in the first verse of the Shikshastakam, right? As I like to overemphasize, in the good sense, overemphasize. The only thing that Mahaprabhu officially wrote is the Shikshastakam, and the very first word of the very first verse of the only thing that Mahaprabhu wrote about is subconscious, chitta darpana marjana. So chitta means the subconscious mind, subconscious shed, as I like to say sometimes, which is all related to shadow, because shadow means those things that are put there outside of our view. So the very first word he invokes is something related to do your shadow work, right? Which he considers glorious, like this famous Gundicha Marjan Lila, the cleansing of the Gundicha temple, is a very speaking about interpretive ways of reading scripture, as we have been talking in our Bhagavatam study. Gundicha Marjan Lila is literally very clearly about anartha nivritti. And Mahaprabhu is, before anyone dares to enter into the messiness, into the dust, into the stuff, into the shadow, Mahaprabhu is garlanding every devotee, right? Decorating them with sandalwood paste and praising each one of them before they get muddy, so to say, before they dare to look at the shadow, they dare to enter into this work of sorting out this inner map. So he himself is saying, this is glorious. This is a messy, glorious task. So shadow work, I will say, to put it in simple words, is basically to dare to look at your shadow. And a very simple analogy is that when we walk in one direction, our shadow follows us, right? No matter where we go, no matter how fast we run, no matter how much we try to hide, the shadow is running behind us. But when you look in the other direction, trying to look at your shadow, the shadow disappears, right? So like the example in many ancient traditions about the dragon, right? So the dragon keeps getting bigger and more fiery the more you do not want to look at it, the more scared you are to confront the dragon. But when you open the door that the dragon is knocking upon and threatening to devour everything, the dragon disappears. Right? So shadow work, of course, I don't want to sound over simplistic. Like just open the door and that's shadow work, right? Just look at your shadow and that's it. Like if it's a one act performance. But it all begins with that, right? It all begins with acknowledging that we have a shadow, that there is something called shadow. You may use any other word. Again, it's not about the wording, but what is, right? So I think, and in this connection, something that I think is important that many times we overlook, because many times we think in terms of shadow, and as you were also referring, Hari Vyasa, that first of all, we tend to label anarthas as just, or as many things, not only anarthas, but we tend to be sometimes quite reductionistic in how we define things and how many realities can enter into that thing. Like we were talking the other day, I shared something that you shared with me. Now I'm revealing publicly who was the friend who shared this poem by Jagadananda that I shared the other day about how to conceive Namaparat in a very loving way, in a very positive way, because generally we think of aparat as something that paralyzes us, terrifies us. It's like a eternal branding that once you become an aparati, there's no coming back from that. We don't use eternal hell, we use aparat, and it carries as equal weight and heaviness many times as Christians may invoke the notion of eternal flames. Unfortunately, because aparat means to act against love, and I'm not saying let's do it, guys, but it's quite different from the historical weight that has been attached to the notion of aparad and aparadi. I shared that poem because, of course, you shared that with me first, and a few years ago when we met last year, someone asked a question, and without knowing about that poem, I shared a few thoughts similar in terms of how to reframe our speaking about even offenses to the name in terms, so we don't have to speak in terms of don'ts. We don't need to start with a don't. Do not do this, do not do that, and your whole reality and practice is about not doing stuff. Again, of the four regulative principles, right? Do not do this. No, it's not that. It's be compassionate, be introspective, be willing to be as loving as you can, all positive virtues. We can speak in terms of don'ts many times because many times we need to deconstruct false understanding of things. So Krishna, when he speaks about what the Atma is, he starts saying what the Atma is not. because he assumes we have quite a long list of misreadings about who we are. So we need to deconstruct that first. So there's place for a negative theology of sorts, but sometimes we make too much of it, and the whole process is framed in terms of don'ts. So we can be reductionistic in that sense, or as you say, Harvey, in terms of of anartha, we can just limit, greed, anger, and these, and also see them as, again, project evil onto them rather of seeing that as particular energy expressions that need to be dovetailed in a healthy way, right? But sometimes in the naming and listing of what's an anartha, we forgot to include in the list so many other things. So anartha means false value. To begin with, we many times misdefined what's anartha. So to have a false value, a false belief, a false notion about anything, that's an anartha. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said the first anartha is tattva-vibhram, to be bewildered about reality. I mean, who is not bewildered about reality, right? Avidya, basically, right? To not have a clear picture of what is what. So from that, so many other things come. And yeah, so many other anarthas may be there. Not for us to feel even worse about us having anarthas, just to normalize certain conditions. And many times things like toxic shame and toxic guilt are not included in the list, or things that are, again, like this, put into the shadow. I'm finishing writing a fourth book, and it's all about unconditional love, but also what gets in the way in terms of all the false stories we tell ourselves about our uselessness and I'm totally unlovable. That's a very deep anartha, probably even worse than the so-called capital sins we are accustomed to talk about. But what I wanted to say, and this was just a preface, is that when we speak about shadow, shadow commonly is understood like the repository of what we repress out of shame, out of guilt, our fear, let's call it our wounds, our flaws, unacceptable impulses that are there, but we don't want to see. And I agree, I'm not saying that's not part of the shadow, but for example, someone like Carl Jung, who was the one to introduce the very notion of the shadow, he will say, if you only see those things as the shadow, the picture is still incomplete. Because in addition to repressed weaknesses or repressed character flaws, many of us also repress our strengths, our talents, our highest potential. And that's called the golden shadow. There is a name for that. So you have the dark shadow if you want, but you have the golden shadow. In my upcoming book, I'm speaking about that. I have here in front of me a quote from Marianne Williamson, a well-known quote. She says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frighten us. Another psychologist, Abraham Maslow, also spoke about that, the Jonah complex. Going to Jonah, the character of the Bible, who was running away from the greatness that he was born to embody. So he will say something similar, that we fear with higher possibilities. We are very much afraid of becoming that which we can glimpse in our most perfect moments, under the most perfect conditions. We become terrified about our highest potential. It's paradoxical, right? We, in one sense, he will say, we thrill on those possibilities. We enjoy, we thrill on the incredible potential that accompanies the self, in such, especially when we have a glimpse of that in those peak moments. And yet, we simultaneously shiver with weakness and fear, because before those very same possibilities. Because of course, there is a price to pay to embrace our highest potential. There is a series of debts that have to be embraced in that connection. So the resistance to the golden shadow reveals a deeper refusal of responsibility. Because again, to fully acknowledge my potential is to surrender to all that I can be, and to leave the refuge of being compliant, passive, so to say. So this comes to my mind in connection to shadow work, because again, sometimes if we start misdefining what's the shadow, we misdefine what's shadow work, and we are just doing half of the equation. And it's a half truth, and sometimes they say half truth is worse than a lie, outright lie, right? So we do not only need to work on what makes us more ashamed of us and our shortcomings, but also the byproducts, the consequences of embracing our practice potential and daring to accept, like again, Krishna is saying in the Gita 3 times in one verse, 220, the soul is wonderful. Ascharya, Ascharya, Ascharya. You are wonderful. You are amazing. You are incredible. And we have a hard problem accepting that. Many of us, we still do not believe that verse. Many of us are still trying to contact Vyasadeva, not Hari Vyasadeva, but the Vyasadeva. So if he can edit that verse and put it out of the Bhagavad Gita, so we don't get so triggered when we read that the sweet absolute is telling you in the love confession, love like letter, you're absolutely amazing, amazing, amazing. I wouldn't have a clue what to do with that. So that's also shadow work. Follow my point? Just to broaden what it means. So when we speak in practical terms, what to do, we know what we are trying to do, what we are dealing with. So yeah, I will say, first of all, again, trying to get a clear definition of what we are talking about by shadow, varieties of the shadow work, as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, in that case, also trying to see how that's present in our tradition to normalize the conversation, whether we speak about, again, Chitta Darpana Marjanam or Anartha Nibriti, and what's Anartha, and expanding the list of that and normalizing that as part of the journey rather than stigmatizing the fact of having anarthas. I mean, anartha nibriti goes up until Bhava Bhakti, our acharyas say. It will be a long way coexisting with anarthas. So the idea is you better get to coexist together nicely, because it will be a long journey together. Because if you torture yourself by having anarthas, well, you will have a few of those even in the threshold of prem. So become good neighbors. Now, some fences may be required, but still be good neighbors. And as you say, we need to learn from all that. Again, our anarthas are not there as enemies. No, let's not create this like devil outside idea, and I have to kill them, and I have to. Krishna is saying very clear in the Gita 6:6, your mind can be your best friend, can be your worst enemy, but it can be your best friend. So it's not that you need to kill your worst enemy. Even more challenging, you need to make a best friend out of your worst enemy. Oops, that's complicated. So it's not that you need to kill your lust. You need to learn how to lust for God in a healthy way. I mean, the same word that is used for lust, kam, in Sanskrit, in a negative way, is used for the love of the gopis, kam. Kama Rupa Bhakti. Rupa Goswami even frames the whole devotion of the gopis and the whole way of following after the love of the gopis, Kama Nuga Bhakti. So it's all about kam. It's all about desire. Kamas tadagre, says the Rig Veda. In the beginning there was kam. It doesn't say in the beginning there was the word. The Rig Veda says in the beginning there was kam, which you can translate as desire or lust. That's not necessarily a bad word. We just need to integrate, no? Integrate all the things. No? Recently I did a podcast with Ken Wilber, and he's all about integral theories and integration, and we don't need to reject anything. And that's basically Rupa Goswami's definition of Yukta Vairagya. Vairagya, proper renunciation. When he defines proper renunciation, he says it's not about renouncing anything. It's just about renouncing the misnotion that you are the center, basically, that things are not connected to Krishna. That's the only renunciation we embrace, to see things outside of connection. To embrace separateness, that's what we have to renounce. That's our renunciation. We renounce a sense of separateness. That's our vairagya. When we do that, everything shows up in its proper light in connection to the center. So there's nothing to renounce. So everything finds its place. All that's a full circle, interestingly, right? In the beginning is all these are anarthas, get rid of them. And then you eventually reach up to Golok Vrindavan, and Rupa Goswami is describing the secondary rasas with our anger and fear and all this stuff, and the love of the gopis is depicted as lust, and it's like, what's going on here? All these words depicting anarthas on day one are depicting love in eternity in day 108 over there. So yeah, at the end of the day, it's not rejecting them. It's just misdirected energy that needs to be expressed properly. So of course we are not in Golok Vrindavan either, at least I'm not there. So the question is, okay, if I'm being visited by one of these particular, let's put it, emotional weathers, emotional landscapes, what's the teaching there? What do I need to do? If I'm feeling angry, I don't need to repress my anger. Krishna the Gita say, what do we need? What do we gain by repression? It's a rhetorical question, meaning nothing. So what to do with what's behind my anger? Again, anger is not the last word of the story. What's behind my anger? Probably there is some necessity I had that was not properly fulfilled. So which was that necessity? No? Probably was not so much of a genuine necessity. It was more a superficial necessity. But even the superficial necessity is hinting at a deeper real necessity that I lost sight of. So we can do all that introspection to connect something truly genuine and even feel compassion for ourselves in a healthy way and work on that and learn a lesson from that particular anger visit. So that's an integration, so to say, a learning from what we will label as anartha. And as I also speak just to be practical, in radical personalism, shadow work many times has to do with things that are out of sight. So we may use the word unconscious. And many times this is the classical question, okay, how do I deal with my unconscious if it's unconscious, right? If something is unconscious, in the unconscious, by definition, I am unconscious of it. So how to gain consciousness of that? And there are two things that I will say. One, going back to Carl Jung, he will say, of course, one very natural, easy way to glimpse at what's hiding in the shed of the unconscious is check what triggers you. Pay attention to what makes you overreact. To respond to something outside of proportion. But again, you have to pay attention, right? That's one thing. But another thing, even more immediate, I will say, before we bother too much about how to deal with my subconscious, try to deal with the conscious, right? Try to deal with those things that you're already conscious of, and you need to work on them, and you are doing nothing about them, or not as much as we know we could do about them. Because if not, we speaking about the subconscious and shadow work may even become a form of bypassing, right? Like I have to deal with all those things, I don't know what they are, but you already know a few things that you're invited to do something about, and we are not doing all that we could by resorting to the shadow, so to say, to what we do not see. But there are some things that probably are right in front of our faces and are inviting us to, begging us to do our homework. And by integrating what's on the consciousness level, naturally, the next batch that is in the subconscious will next occupy the conscious chapter when we deal with what we are conscious of now. So gradually the subconscious starts to become more and more conscious. And of course, again, trusting that by spiritual practice, Chetu Darpana Marjana, some of the dust from the subconscious starts to move. No? We start to sweep and some things start to become more apparent. And that may be triggering and that may be unsettling. And that's part of the glorious byproduct of sadhana. It's not that we are doing something wrong, so we shouldn't misdiagnose that. Oh no, I'm practicing and now I feel worse than ever. I'm realizing I'm a mess. Yeah, but before that you were a mess, but you had not realized that. So you are in a way better position now. It's painful, but it's not as painful as living a life of deception, right? When there are things there that you are not seeing. Now you are seeing them and it hurts, but you are seeing them. Now next step is staying with that pain, not running away from that pain, and gradually learning from that, integrating that. Then the next batch will come, and so on and so forth. And I will say, yeah, all that in big part is our individual work of introspection and observing self-knowledge, self-observance, and how we are moving and reacting and thinking. That requires a deep degree of presence, vigilance, not neurotic, healthy vigilance, and hopefully also getting support and feedback and mirroring back from well-wishers in a healthy environment that can also mirror back things that we may not be able to see by ourselves. With compassion, again, with compassion, comprehension and compassion. So a few words I'm saying, again, the rest is just, as we were talking last week, how do I learn to ride the bicycle? Ride the bicycle. No, but how do I learn? Ride the bicycle. But no, you follow my point? So sometimes it's just trying and doing and falling, of course, from the bicycle, going back, getting back again, having someone next to us. Of course, we won't be just thrown into a cliff with a bicycle. So, but at one point there is something that just we only us we can do, and we have to start trying to do it. And that in itself is glorious. That in itself is inspiring Mahaprabhu to garland you and put some sandalwood paste on your forehead, as he did in the Gundicha Marjan Lila. I don't know. I hope that helps. Aribhyasadev, you tell me if there is something that you feel may need to be further explored or you would like to share with us.
No, I think this is really what I needed to hear today.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. It was great, important. Thank you. So before we move on to the next raised hand from Abhinandana in India, I'll invite you for a few moments to our Zoom breakout rooms where we spend a few moments, as you know, churning out in small groups of 3, 4, something like that. Whatever we have shared has stirred in our hearts, and whatever we feel inspired to share in intimacy and community, trying to gain further insight about this unending truths. So Bhaktarasa will be opening those rooms now for a few minutes, and we'll be back to continue our exploration. Welcome. Welcome you all back. Hoping you had a nourishing time, and for me to make sure that you had a nourishing time and that you were not just gossiping in private rooms in Zoom, a new idea came to my mind, which is to briefly invite some of you for a short moment to share with us one of the main jewels that you got in your private room. So you can be generous enough and share that with us. So I will randomly invite a few of you just in a minute or something so we don't get it okay, I'm seeing some raised hands coming. I was going to invite a few. Katie, you were the first one. Main jewel from this exploration in the breakthrough rooms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Maharaj. Manjuali mentioned the value and the beauty of the shadow, and I'm not going to say as well as she did, but she just completely turned my perspective of the shadow upside down and made it into something instead of being like bad that has to be fixed or cured. It's like, oh, this has value, and let's work with it with kindness and see the beauty there. That was kind of mind-blowing for me.
Well, thank you for that, Katie, and thank you for that, Manjuali, of course. Rasangi, I'll skip Rasangi because she raised her hand with something else later. No, she doesn't want me to skip her. I was just trying.
Really? You're so funny.
Sure,
Really?
Jewel. In 1
I
minute,
know.
concisely, sense
I know,
brevity.
it's very quick. This is a shot, a starburst. Anyway, in the group with Amanda and Sajan, who you know, um, we were all saying what a gift this is. The Sangha is such a blessing. And how we all have been looking for this for many, many years. And to find it is such beyond description of adjectives. That's all to say.
Okay, thank you. We are humbled and accept the beautiful words that, yeah, commit us to serve better all together. Yeah. Sam, your 1 minute jewel.
Okay, no pressure. It was speaking to Renee and Abhinandana. We were really appreciating the golden shadow. And it was something that Abhinanda said, it stuck in my mind about bringing all the parts under the leadership of the self. And I thought that sounded like such a compassionate perspective to have of all these parts that are sort of hidden away in the shadow, but are revealed by the light of Paramatma and the self as well. So I just really appreciate that turn of phrase, because it's really shifted it for me.
No, thank you. Thank you for that. And let me pick one randomly myself. Patrak. Yes, you knew it.
Yeah, well, it's not the message per se, it's just the other two lovely devotees that I just got to know, really. That was a lovely experience. And talking about shadows, I just had also the thought, and I think it was mentioned before, a shadow doesn't have to be something bad. A shadow can be also a resting place and nourishing too, out of the heat for some time in that sense. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, we can make art with shadow, right? There are artists that play with shadows, and it's just about creativity at the end of the day, right? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you all for also lending yourself for my online social experiments with each one of you. Now let's continue recreate it. And in that line, we'll invite the next one who raised their digital hand originally, honoring the original cue, who is Abhinandana from India. Welcome, and please unmute yourself. Bring your offering.
Pranam Raj. So I just want to say one line for my question. It really struck when Rasangima told that this is Sangha we've been looking for many years. I mean, in my case, it's not many years, it was a few months, but it's very beautiful to discuss these things. So my question was, I was hearing about love shaping the divine, like Narasimhadev's form being born out of Prahlad's love, and it was very beautiful. So I was thinking, does this also happen in small ways, wherever we are on our journey? Like I'm not whole yet. There are a lot of parts to integrate. It's a long journey. So, how would love shape the divine for me? Like maybe this moment, or in my current relationship with God. Was I?
Sorry?
That's it.
Oh, okay. I was just waiting if there was anything else that you wanted to mention. Okay, that's a beautiful invitation, of course, to a beautiful idea that it's very present in our tradition, even in ways that we may not realize. That God is shaped. I mean, everyone, including the divine, is shaped by love. Love is the ultimate sculptor, if you want to use that terminology, right? And it all begins going back to what we have been talking about a few weeks ago, how to read the verse in different layers, any section of scripture, we can take Bhagavad Gita 4:11, famous verse, where Krishna is saying, as someone worships me, I reciprocate accordingly, right? I respond in the way you approach me. So again, that's a general statement, but when you play out the full implications of what it means, if the sweet absolute is approached with unguarded love from our side, with full dedication, full transparency, the absolute equally responds with this same unguarded vulnerability and openness and fragility in love. He allows himself to be moved. I mean, there are verses in Chaitanya Charitamrita that describe Krishna as a puppet, right? Dancing according to the movements of the puppeteer love. So in that highest act of mutual surrender, God starts to give himself, so to say, himself, herself, themselves as a dancer, starts to dance according to love's tune. Krishna himself, in the pen of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, says, Radhikar Prema Guru, I'm a Shishyanata. Sri Radha is my Prem Guru, my teacher in the arts of love, and I'm a dancing pupil at her school. So, and of course, we take it literally. We can read this literally. God is shaped by love, right? So shaped means there are different shapes of God, different forms. In our personal tradition, personalist tradition, we believe that God has a form. We wouldn't say a form that limits, because generally the idea in many spiritual circles is God cannot have a form, because if he were to have a form, God will be limited. What will be limited? But that's our own limited understanding of form. And even here we can see form facilitating, right? Like facilitating an experience that requires a form. I'm an artist, let's say. I have artistry in potential inside of me, like boiling over, wanting to be expressed. But I may need the form of a guitar, or the form of a flute, or the form of a paper, and I may need a pen if I want to pour my poetry out, right? Pour my heart in the form of poetry. I need a form that facilitates. It's not a form that limits. Okay, so form is not necessarily limit. So God can have form, and it can be an unlimited form, which sounds paradoxical to our current experience of forms, which are kind of localized in a certain plane and space, 3D, but we are talking about something else here, about a form made of Ghana Chetana, will say scripture, of condensed consciousness. So, and we have many of those. Our tradition will speak about endless forms of the divine. Ikam Shat Vipra Bahuda Budanti. That's the famous one-liner from the Vedic lore. No? Truth is one and expresses itself in a multiplicity of ways. That's kind of a given in India, at least. Not only in India, but in India, it's normal that, yeah, of course, we're talking about the infinite. You cannot reduce the infinite to one form name. That's an oxymoron to infinity. And we will say from our Bhakti perspective, yeah, God responds uniquely to a type of love. Love impacts. No? God is not an untouched person. As some Christian theologians will say, not all, but some, God is the unmoved mover, right? And many Christian theologians will disagree with that and will say, no, God is the most moved mover, right? God is a sensible reality, personality, and is affected by affection, by everything. It has the biggest heart, the biggest capacity to feel it all, so to say, in the context of love. It's beyond our imagination. So and he wants a personal relationship with each one of us. So his form, his shape made of love, again, if God is love, basically means God cannot cannot not be love. So love is, you are made of love in every pore of your being. Imagine that. We cannot imagine that, but that's what Revelation says. So if you're made of love, you will naturally, to each particular relationship you're having as God, love is unique, right? Love is not just one thing that expresses itself in one single way into every possible single direction. Thank you, John, for clarifying. Unmoved mover come from Aristotle, and of course, as we know, Christianity at large has been mostly influenced by Greek thought, by Jesus himself in many ways, at least on a doctrinal level. So that's a point in that direction. And many are working on that. That's a very important point as well. So going back to the point, God is made of love, and love is not uniform, right? It's not that I love my mom, my wife, my children, my dog, my guru, my brother in the exact same way. But I could say I love all of them. But love is, again, there's a pluriformity. Love is pluriform, as Thomas J. Orr will say. It takes different shapes. And that's why we say God has different shapes. Why? Because love takes different shapes, and God is love. So according to the uniqueness of any given particular relationship, and we are a unique particular person, there will be a unique particular flavor of love taking place there, and therefore a unique particular shape of God taking shape there, taking place there. So when Krishna says in the Gita, according to how you approach me, I reciprocate, it's not just, I don't know, if you love me in Aishwarya, I love you, I reciprocate in Aishwarya and I take the shape of Lakshmi Narayan. If you love me in the Madhurya of Vrindavan, and particularly, I don't know, in the Vatsalya Bhava of Yashoda, I take the shape of little Bala Gopal. All that is true, but still is not radically personal. On top of all that, he will take a unique form that corresponds to the unique love that you will be expressing in relationship to Bhagavan. A unique, unrepeatable form. You follow my point? So let's say Krishna has romantic love for each one of the gopis in Vrindavan, but that doesn't mean that his form made of love, again, is exactly the same for each one of those gopis, because none of those gopis love him romantically exactly in the same way. So he will be shaped. We have to use poetic language here. He will be carved out of that unique love, and a unique form will come as a result of that. He will be impacted by that unique love, the uniqueness of that love, and that will sculpt out of Bhagavan, so to say, a unique form to reciprocate to that unique love, a form of love. So I think that's very beautiful, because that kind of affirms that God cares for us and God is interested in us for who we are individually. No, he's not like he's loving people generically. Okay, all of you, those you guys who love me in my majestic form, okay, I love all of you in this flavor. No? Like you go to the supermarket and you buy different flavors, but still they are not unlimited, right? But they give you a variety of flavors. But in this case, there will be a unique flavor for each particular person. So that's how personally involved the Sweet Absolute wants to be in our life. And again, it may sound too good to be true, may be difficult for us to believe, but that much with me, but who am I? That's a real question. You don't know who you are. And that's why we are asking the question. If we will get a bigger picture of who we are and the potential in love and how bhakti graces our lives and how bhakti impacts in the heart of the Sweet Absolute even, then, wow, that takes us to another place of wondering things. And of course, at that time, you are no longer asking, why is he loving me in this way? You are too busy reciprocating with your own love to the Sweet Absolute. You are too engaged. But before that level of absorption and self-forgetfulness in divine love, a full uninterrupted dedication that now may terrify us. It's healthy to have this foundation of spending enough time with the idea of how personally willing Krishna is, Bhagavan is, Bhagavati are to relate to us for who we are, what they are seeing in us that makes them interested in us, that we are not seeing at all, probably. And spending time with that and developing some healthy, humble sense of dignity, some dignifying humility. As we always say, humility has to be dignifying. Krishna says, you are wonderful. We have to learn to accept those words. Humility is not to contradict Krishna, say, no, I'm not wonderful and you are wrong in that verse of the Bhagavad Gita. That's not humility. So how do I consent to that truth in a way that is still humbling and totally dignifying and fills me with hope and enthusiasm to reciprocate, and realizing, wow, my love can impact God. God can be shaped by my love. Wow. Again, there's no reason to become proud about it. It's all love's work. Because we will be equally sculpted and shaped by love's impact in our life. It's not that we are beyond that. And again, you can even have a glimpse of that over here without speaking about lofty ideals in transcendence. I mean, when you are in front of someone that you love as much as you can love someone today, that will affect your shape. You will have a different countenance and face expression, and I don't know, you will acquire an aura, so to say, if you're in front of someone who makes you like shiver. I don't know, so many things that can be even corroborated on a psychophysical level. Change of color, and so literally you are changing shape because of love. So that's already happening. And we are not talking maybe here still about the full impact of the purest and deepest form of love. So but you already have a hint of that. So what to speak of when we are speaking about the most intense and thick expression of love that affects everything and everyone in all possible levels, and God is first in that list. So yeah, that's what I like to call radical personalism. It's very personal. I don't know if that helps, Abhinandana. What do you think? Let us know.
Yes, Maharaj. I need to think about this, what you said more, and
Yeah.
I could really, I had like a oh yes moment when you said when you were in front of someone that you love, then you change, it carves you. So that was like I was able to. It was very beautiful. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. And again, not to limit all these ideas to what we may be experiencing now, but we need some point of reference that remains relatable to our current experience. So these are not just abstract words that I have no clue what you are talking about. So when we can somehow find some correspondence in the here and now, then that may help us to start to conceive what lies at the end of the day, lies still beyond our thinking. So you can think about that more. I mean, no problem, but watch out for thinking too much, because about these things, there's a point where thinking also needs to collapse. And we need to enter into a trans-rational method of, opening and grace to descend and revelation to occur. But yeah, I'm glad that you had that yes moment. We all need those. And Bhaktiras is adding a question in connection, says, is the Jiva carvable? Again, we love to create new words always. Carvable in reciprocating relationship with the divine? Yeah, I think I mentioned that briefly. It's mutual, right? Of course, again, what to speak? If God is shaped by love, that's the same with us. When we speak about Siddha Deha in our tradition, that's a topic we touched upon in my first book. the Siddha Deha is a form made of love, literally. Like we are entering into that particular form made of love, and it's, in one sense we could say, it's never a final form also, right? It's difficult to think about the things, but we may think, okay, eventually a devotee realizes her ultimate identity of service in the spiritual world, and it will be in this form, in this service, with this name, and sometimes we hear even details, this dress color and this age and whatever. Okay, I have no problem with any of that, but still understand that that's a form made of, in our tradition we'll say, made of Swarup Shakti, made of Bhakti Shakti. Now, we are Tatastha Shakti, and at that point we will be enveloped, so to say, Tadatmya, made almost one with attaining sameness with that Swarup Shakti. Jiva Goswami gives the example of the iron bar put onto the fire, right? The iron bar remains iron bar, but it becomes fire-like by ongoing proximity with the fire. So at the point that we gain that level of ongoing proximity with Swarup Shakti, we receive a fire-like identity. We are shaped by the fire of love. and I've seen that John made the comment before about the refiner's fire. That's another fire, but it's all about fire. No wonder that was the first word that Brahma heard on the universe, tapas, which means fire. It's fire all along from day one to the But when we, let's say, attain, receive, realize, whatever word you want to use, this eternal and spiritual fire-like real identity made of love, it's not that that's a final product, because again, love is ever evolving, as we try to make the case in evolution in divine love. So love keeps expanding, right? Chaitanya Charitamrita said Krishna is the all attractive, but at every moment he becomes more attractive. So his body is all beautiful, but his body keeps becoming more beautiful. And that keeps increasing the love of the gopis. But the love of the gopis are made of love. So the love of the gopis means their own body and identity made of love keeps increasing. So their own shape or form, it's continuing to be affected by the ongoing exchange of love. So it never remains one museum-like piece form as we used to think about things. Even our body here, again, going back to a point of reference, this body, this lifetime is always changing and moving. The number of cells dying and being reborn are on the millions per moment. So even if we don't realize that, and we look at ourselves in the mirror and think, oh, I have the same face as yesterday, so many changes are going on. Even when we are not talking about introducing bhakti in the equation, what to speak when we bring bhakti into the table. So that's the point I want to make, just to conclude. Not only God is carved by love, not only we are carved by love, but the carving goes on ad infinitum, perpetually. No? The artist, the carver, love is too inspired to stop carving. No? It's too inspired to leave the sculpting business. It's an ongoing thing, and there's always something else to do, to highlight a new shape and a new expression of beauty, and that's how the lila goes on for eternity, and nobody gets bored. So it's a very exciting prospect, my friends. You will not get bored in Golok Vrindavan. Just in case you had that concern, that's not happening. Okay, let's continue carving together in the carving rooms, in Zoom private carving rooms. Abhinandana, yeah.
Just one thing. I'll just make it short.
Yeah.
What came up was, you said that when we are in front of a person who loves us, then we change. And for me, it's more like when I am right now. It's the temple. So when I go to the temple, I have a sense of safety. So for me, that would mean like to be with a person whom I trust loves me would mean feeling safety. But then, of course, I can't see God right now, and I don't know how my love would impact God. So that there's a question that comes: am I loving God, or I don't know if I'm clear, but then it's like I don't know. I can't see what relationship I have with. Of course, I'm working on myself, on integration, but about
You're already loving
this.
God to some degree. There are degrees. This is not a black and white question. Am I loving God or not? I mean, it's not yes or no. We're already on the path of bhakti. There's already love knocked on our door and we dare to open. And we are trying to do our best, and integration and healing as a human is part of the project. It's not a divorce thing. At the same time, that doesn't mean you are loving Krishna as much as you could possibly love him in eternity. You can always love him more. So it's not quite a yes or no question. No, I mean, we can always love Krishna more, which doesn't mean we are not loving him at all. So just be careful not to go to any of those extremes, not to the extreme of neuroticism. No, I'm not loving him. Nothing of that is there. Not to the extreme of complacency, right? I'm already loving Krishna. I'm initiated. I'm chanting my 16 rounds. I'm going to the temple. I'm checking the boxes. I don't have anything else to do. Leave me alone. Come on. The nature of love is ever evolving, but the ever evolvingness of love shouldn't drive us crazy in terms of, I'm not loving him still enough. Relax. In eternity, there will be room for perpetual unfolding of love. And nobody will dare to say, that's what I mentioned in my third book. One of the rules of love is generally you won't dare to say, I love you, not because there's no love at all, but because you're having a glimpse of how much more love there could be. That to state I love you sounds like bringing closure to a reality that exists in perpetual disclosure. So, but again, going back to our day-to-day life, I think it's for many of us, at least on a certain level of the journey, to have that assurance that I'm already on the path. Love is already in my life, and therefore there is love in me to some degree. Maybe I have not officially attained Prem Bhakti, but Bhakti is there. And Prem Bhakti is the final blossoming, quote unquote, final of the vine of devotion, which is already in our life. So there is a place to feel that healthy certainty and reassuring support that, yeah, that's already there. That's already happening. And there is no end to that happening. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, a few minutes. Let's go to the churning, sculpting, crafting, carving rooms. You name it as it works better. And continue sharing together for a few moments and see you back soon. Oh, welcome. Welcome, welcome. Reminds me this prayer of Father Thomas Keating about welcoming the day. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So hoping you had a good time over there. And as we continue with our new online social experiment, I'd like to invite a few of you to make a 1-minute jewel sharing darshan who would like to do so. If not, I can pick. I have no problem with that, as you know. Let's invite Jamuna. Why not? Where is the parrot? It was there at the beginning.
They're sitting up on the thing there, preening each other.
So, Sukadev Goswami always press and giving blessings to our gathering.
It was actually right. Okay, so I was with Katie and Manjuwali, and they had beautiful conversation. And Katie was saying how, in relationship, how it carves both people. She said it in a way, and it slipped my mind, but it was very beautifully said. And then right at the end, Manjuwali just slipped in this line: the quest is to be open to being shaped by love.
And
So
you took note of that. You're reading from your notebook, so that was important.
Yeah, I just quickly thought, oh my gosh, I have to write that down. So yeah, that was the one-liner from Manjuwali.
Thank you. Thank you. Who else we can invite? Pradhana Gopika, please. Your 1-minute ocean jewel you discover in this journey.
Hare Krishna. I was discussing with Radha Priya about how the love of the mother or the father shapes also the child, not just physically, when the mother smiles because of love, then the child responds usually responds accordingly, and that the love of the mother and father, they shapes the personality of the child as well. And we were also talking about how how even animals and plants respond to love. I think everyone who is a gardener as a, in free time or whatever professionally knows that plants are very sensitive for love, and they respond to love.
Yeah, even water, right? Masaru Emoto's experiment and things like that. I mean, yes, there's so much sensitivity all around us. Thank you for sharing. Who else? One more. Let me invite. Who can I invite? Shamkund. Which was your 1 minute epiphany?
I was with Slavomir and Anutama, and we were speaking a bit about the comparison with our human experience and how the love shapes us. And yeah, Slavomir brought also the notion that it can shape us in a way we don't want eventually, but we are not able to see it in the moment, maybe. Like we change ourselves for the other person in a way that's not good, or like for the feeling of not being enough, we may change ourselves in a bad way.
Yeah, thank you. But of course, but what I will add, of course, that wouldn't be love shaping us, because love wouldn't demand that we become something we do not want or we're not supposed to be. But as you say, how we may misconstrue what love is and end up making a whole codependent thing or something that erases who we are rather than affirms it. So, but yeah, that's an important dimension to consider. Thank you to you all. We have 2 more raised digital hands, and I think that will be enough for today. So the next one is Rasangi, or honoring the original order of the queue. So Rasangi from California, welcome, invited to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Maharaj. And all the questions have been totally divine, and the answers also. The questions
so now
have
you
been.
have to keep up. You have to keep up the standard now.
The questions
you have to
have
bring
been
a
wonderful.
totally divine question, whatever that means.
We shall see. Well, the thing is that, Maharaj, we're studying EDL every week, and
What's EDL?
Well,
Not
evolution and divine love.
It's
and
okay.
We're having so many ahas, and it's so rich and delicious and wonderful. And yet I find myself needing to go back to radical personalism to fully understand certain things in order to get there, to arrive at love. So one of the things recently I've been aware of is the vulnerability. And I know it's important because it's the first principle in the manifesto, and you spent 23 pages in the book discussing it. So it's such a big thing, Maharaj, how to walk through this world vulnerable, not like shut down because of the pain that comes from loving, let's say. I mean, suffering does come when we love, and in different ways we feel that suffering and tend to want to do something about it to get rid of it. But what we were talking about yesterday, and then I have a phrase that you coined that I want to mention, that like it seems like we're supposed to go through, accept what is, God comes as our life, approach it with love and openness, accepting what is. But then when we get hurt because of love that's not reciprocated or something happening with our loved ones, I'm meant to feel that suffering, that pain, but not close down, be able to stay open-minded and not like shut down mentally, but allow the feelings to be there and walk through it. maybe praying, asking for help, support, guidance, which happens when we do that, it seems like. Anyway, you coined a phrase here that whether we know it or not, longing for full surrender is nothing but longing for full vulnerability. Whew. That's on page 151. Longing for full surrender is nothing but longing for full vulnerability. And I think what we're talking about here before is being able to be who we are, allowing that to be. That's the ticket. That's what we're supposed to be doing, is uncovering. And that leaves you really vulnerable, but it's also very challenging and can be very painful. And so I'm just asking a little bit about dealing with that pain as we are vulnerable and experience the ramifications of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes we have to leave loved ones because we're no longer compatible, or they don't see things the way we do, and we have to, even though we love them, there's pain there, grief. Does that make sense? I hope it does.
Well, it makes sense. Sometimes it doesn't make sense in practice to go through that, but it's part of the journey. And of course, when we talk about vulnerability, or you brought that quote that I'm talking about, false surrender, I don't want to sound that's a particular quote coming in a certain context, right? So we are not here expecting, much less demanding false surrender on the spot, or full vulnerability for that matter. Sometimes we may be in certain situations in life that we need to shut down. It's not just like, come on, let's all you be vulnerable. Why you are shutting down? Because for whatever reason, the healthier thing to do for me at this precise moment is to shut down, and there's place for that, right? So in talking about vulnerability, I don't want to indirectly bully those who are not vulnerable enough or fully vulnerable, because who can be fully vulnerable? What does it mean to be vulnerable fully or enough? Is there something as enough vulnerability? So it's a gradual process of exposure to safety and feeling safe, and like it's funny because some time ago when I was doing some workshop that spoke a lot about vulnerability, and they make this important point, right? That they will say, if you are in a gathering and someone tells you, and it's a gathering where you're invited to share vulnerably, but someone tells you in advance, like to start, this is a safe space, so therefore you can be vulnerable, you can trust. But if someone starts telling you this is a safe space, that in itself is not safe, right? Because who can tell me what is safe? I have to feel the safety. You cannot tell me this is safe. If you're telling me this is safe or trying to convince me this is safe, the more you try, the more unsafe I feel. So it has to be experience in our bones, so to say, safety. And only then I can be vulnerable, undress myself, so to say, internally, show myself. It's a gradual process. Again, it's never a one act performance. And I was saying that because the other day, after having gone through that, I saw another, it was a video, I think, and someone was starting the meeting, say, okay, you are in a safe space. And I was like, oh no, that's not the right way to start. How can you tell someone you're in a safe space? What does safety mean to each person is different. That's my point. Some person may be feeling safe indeed in the circle, and some other person may not feel safe. And that doesn't mean that there's something wrong going on and someone is a predator, but you have not felt safety yet for whatever valid reasons you may have out of previous experiences and whatever, abuse and resolved trauma. Each case is unique. So my point is in honoring the uniqueness of the journey of each person. the timing and the shape and the way vulnerability happens, if it happens, will be very different in each case. And some person may be feeling that they need to shut down, and to accept that they need to shut down in itself is an act of vulnerability. I need to shut down. And it's not because the environment is bad, but I'm getting triggered for whatever reason, and I need to honor that, and I need to be honest about that. That's great. If that's what you actually need now, that's beautiful. And eventually that will help you to not shut down so much, less and less, and eventually again, we can speak about the full blooming of oneself, but that's again the full blooming of the self. But till that happens, there are so many layers that need to happen, and those so many layers may need to happen in so many lifetimes even. I mean, the other day I was reflecting upon that, on the idea of more than one lifetime, that of course we and other traditions as well entertain. There's not one single lifetime. And though sometimes we may feel like one day was a lifetime, and we could take that macrocosm, microcosm thing, or all that happened in one day is like a microcosm of the macrocosms of one lifetime. But sometimes also we see cases, maybe even our own, that some things affected us so deeply, let's say in our childhood, that will color the entirety of our trajectory in this lifetime. And you can work on that and do healing work and lots of things, but sometimes still's there in some ways, and you may need a different lifetime to be born in a different situation and to receive particular some scars and impressions from the womb to change that trajectory, and it's okay, and it's okay. And that was another way of making sense of rebirth. So I'm saying all this basically just to bring some self-compassion and understanding and patience, and not feeling bad about feeling bad, not feeling bad about being terrified of vulnerability, or not feeling bad about still feeling pain in having to open our heart. Of course, at the same time, I don't want to spoil you and say, don't feel bad, feel okay, don't do anything that feels unsettling, because also that's too much. So we need always the sacred middle path, and to also embrace enough lack of comfort to change, to move somewhere else, but not to a point that it feels so much that I become paralyzed. So we have to pay attention to what's going on in us, in our body. Let's begin with the somatic dimension, because sometimes people literally freeze in some situations. So that may be a way of saying that's too much. What I'm exposed to, I'm okay. You cannot demand more than that. You're already frozen. And maybe for other person they are dancing and running, but the other person is frozen. So for each one is what each one of us need is very particular and different. So again, I will say we need to honor us. I was told once, and I still treasure that advice I received. A friend of mine told me, Maharaj, honor your limitations. And I say that many times, right? So I do not forget it when it comes to facing my limitation on a daily basis. That's a daily affair, right? Confronted with your limitations. And some limitations eventually can be overcome, but sometime before you overcome them, you will be overcome by them for a long time, and you need to honor them. That's a setting of boundaries. That's a lesson in self-compassion, in patience, in self-acceptance, on which basis we can change. No, this is the perennial paradox. You can only change what you accept first. That's Carl Rogers. That's in the epigraph of radical personalism. The great paradox is that if you want to change something so badly, you can only change them by first accepting that you have them. You accept the unchanged stuff, so it can become changed stuff eventually. And accepting is not just saying, yeah, accept it, let's change now. No, You have to sit with that acceptance, because that thing may still be with you before changing for a long time. And you need to accept that all the way till it becomes what it needs to become. It's a pattern, it's a relationship, it's whatever, it's the other person, or it may be my own self, whatever. So some radical acceptance. But again, acceptance not for the sake of perpetuating that thing forever, but for the sake of eventual future change. But understanding, for the real change to happen, there needs to be some deep acceptance that on the outside may seem like I'm just accepting that to remain as it is forever, but that's not the case. No, but I understand that for something to change, and again, just go to your own case. We want to change some things, some thinking patterns, whatever. Sometimes we realize that takes time. It took time. It's one funeral at a time. I need to die to so many things inside of me, to so many false beliefs, to so many narratives and stories I tell about myself. And I need to go through so much to finally get to that change. And that's great. That's not that you failed. It's like that's how change happens. So when we understand the dynamics of those cycles, we can extend understanding and compassion to ourselves and to everything and everyone else who are undergoing those same cycles, right? Again, not for the sake of stagnation and remaining there forever, but also not for the sake of forcing, rushing into change, into a change that won't occur until and unless we dare to go through what needs to happen for the change to actually happen. So we don't want to embrace spirituality just to as another form of deception, again, as a quick evacuation plan from our unsolved self. As we were talking, going back to the shadow world conversation, we want spirituality for the sake of truth. Satyam param dhimahi. Let's all congregate together and adore truth. The truth of what needs to take place, of where I am, of what I want to become, what needs to take place in between for that to happen. All that's part of our journey into the truth. So let's embrace all that in a sustainable way. Not in a stagnant way, not in a neurotizing way, in a healthy middle path, sustainable way. Yukta. Yukta. Krishna uses that word yukta so many times in the Bhagavad Gita, in 6th chapter, this verse, right? Yukta chastasya karmasu yukta swapna babodasya. If you sleep, let it be balanced. If you eat, let it be balanced. Whatever you do while being awake, let it be balanced. Whatever you do while sleeping, let it be. Like trying to say, try to follow the middle path 24/7. And we may fail in doing that. And so be balanced when you fail to be balanced, so to say, right? Okay, I cannot be balanced. Okay, be balanced when you fail to be balanced. Address your lack of balance, which is mass balance as possible. Like boil down to a point when you can invoke some form of healthy balance in the midst of all the other lack of it. I hope that helps. I'm just throwing words that come.
And that was so beautiful. But I was thinking the shutting down is not about going, it's the shutting down I was speaking about is trying to escape what is and my own feelings about stuff. And I'm not doing that so much anymore as we traverse this journey together. And I'm finding it kind of helpful that I'm allowing myself to feel the disappointments or whatever's coming and not avoiding that and shutting down.
Yeah, but I'm saying that shutting down, I'm not saying like it's a permanent solution, but sometimes we get overwhelmed by stuff and you need to shut down to some degree. It's not like it's an ongoing plan. And we do that all the time on some degree or another, even walking on the street. There is so much like overdose of input, publicity and media, and you need to shut down to some of that because if not, it's too much. It's too much. I mean, if you go to the supermarket and you want to buy shampoo and you have 108 options, somehow you need to shut down to some of that, and maybe you close your eyes and just grab the one that is closer, and let's move forward.
I think what I mean is
You get overwhelmed in the. I remember it's another direction. There was a song by the Clash. I used to listen to the Clash in my teenage years, and one song, famous song, is "Lost in the Supermarket," right? So it's basically kind of that, like it's like overwhelmed. So you need to shut down to the overdose of stimuli as an act of self-compassion, actually, not as an evasion of reality. So I get your point. We don't want to make that the rule and we just escape. But sometimes, because I want to be a functional human being in confronting what I need to confront, I may need to put some healthy boundaries. If you want to use the word boundaries, if shut down sounds too much, okay, it's a healthy boundary filter. Thank you.
Interesting.
Thank you, Rosalie. So I will skip this breakout room. Sometimes we skip at least one per meeting, so we can have time to honor each one and we don't go too much beyond the 2-hour frame that somehow became kind of a standard. So we want to address the last one, the last digital raised hand, which comes from Sweta de Pradika, if I'm not mistaken. It's you, right? Yeah.
Maharaj.
Yes, Sweta from Ireland. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Pranam. Yeah, my question is on complacency or laziness. I mean, recently in our recent Lebanon meeting, some of you mentioned it. And then I was thinking about it, like on the one hand, we don't want to force ourselves to do something that we're not inspired to do. But then like it also could look like we may be lazy, especially like, when it comes to our sadhana, maybe, chanting a certain number of rounds or like deity worship or reading or anything, like, so yeah, I mean, I kind of struggle with that because I could just say, oh, I'm not inspired to do this, so I don't want to force myself to do it. But like, am I being lazy? I don't know. So yeah, would like to hear your thoughts.
Well, thank you. A few thoughts, of course, a lot's coming. For some reason, the first thing that came is that many times we misread laziness as not doing enough because we somehow live in a culture of doing, right? So sometimes when someone is just being, we misread that as laziness. That's the first thing that came, though it may not be entirely related with your question, but it's related. Because again, many times this happens in spiritual circles. If you are not overtly productive, whatever, collecting money or doing stuff or reaching this daily number, this daily quota, it sounds like you're less or you're lazy. And generally, we do not value much pure being, so to say. What we will call in our tradition shakshitva, or witnesshood, trying to be present to what is, trying to bear witness to reality, trying to be okay being with ourselves, like the article I shared with you yesterday, about aloneness, about solitude. Solitude many times is not very much valued, or sometimes it's misconstrued with loneliness. But solitude is very productive, very important to just be with yourself doing nothing. There's so much that will only happen when you dare to be with yourself by yourself, doing without any engagement. And again, I know it's difficult because we're in a culture that unfortunately we are obsessed with filling in the gaps, and in a conversation silence comes and becomes uncomfortable, unbearable almost, and people need to say something or pick the phone, or I need to go to the bathroom, even if they don't need to go to the bathroom. Or bring some nonsense gossip topic just to not be in silence because we don't know what to do with that. We have lost our sensibility as a culture in general, of course, with silence, with again not doing, which is a very important exercise of just being I mean, I'm not saying to the extreme and as an excuse of not taking responsibility. Like, I don't know, you're a mother and your baby's crying for your breast milk, and I'm like, I'm just being for the time being. Well, this is not the time for being, right? So I'm talking in general, and this shouldn't be abused. But sometimes all that is misconstrued as laziness. And for me, the real problem, and sometimes again, we need to take rest. Going back to Krishna's verse in the Gita, be balanced in your resting. He will say, in your sleeping, be balanced in your recreation. I mean, all the things that sometimes, unfortunately, are stigmatized and labeled in spiritual circles, like you're in Maya, that shouldn't be happening. How you dare to play ping pong, table tennis, while you should be absorbed in whatever. Come on, relax for a moment. They play so much ping pong in Golok Vrindavan. Krishna has so much fun and plays so much with his friends. So, right, I'm serious. I mean, if you don't allow yourself to indulge in a balanced way, again, in any single form of play, I mean, you're condemning yourself utterly because you want to enter a realm of play. The world of Lila, it's all about play, how you're playful in your day to day. So going back to your question, though I hopefully never left it. For me, it's not so much about laziness and then you are lazy, you should be doing this and you're not doing. But for me, it's finding enough good reasons to do all those things. Many times, it's not that we do not chant or we do not do whatever because we are lazy. It's just because we have not received enough good reasons to do them. And again, it's not about me trying to convince you should do them, because it has to be something very natural or organic that you cannot not do them. At the same time, there is a place for some conscious effort, I must say. It's not like, oh, I don't feel like praying today, so I won't pray. I don't feel like chanting. It can become a little bit like whimsical, and our own daily feelings will command everything. So I think, again, it has to be balanced. It's not just, I don't feel like, and I will do nothing. No, I think it's healthy to have some daily time for whatever. I'm talking in general here, right? But I don't know, praying, chanting, studying. And even if you don't want to do it, show up. Show up with your unwillingness. That in itself is a sacred showing up. Show up to Krishna and say, I do not want to talk to you today, because chanting and praying is basically that, right? And it's embarrassing to put it that way, right? Oh, but he already knows that. So it's, I mean, but you may need to articulate it, and not to feel guilt and go crazy, but just to, I'm feeling this today. I'm come with whatever you have. That's basically the invitation. Again, and realizing Krishna is not waiting for you to be impeccable in your motivation on a daily basis and always chant your rounds for the most noble this reason. Sometimes you don't want to do that. And you go and say, I don't want to do it. That may be the beginning of your prayer day, right? Confessing your unwillingness. Or a word that came the other day as we were in that meeting, apathy. I think that's a very accurate word to indicate sometimes. We may relate that to tamaguna and so on, but many times we feel this apathy. And again, I know that sometimes we may need, going back to the shutting down part, we may need to retreat a little bit. We may need to take some rest. We may need to not be as much involved in practice in certain day or in certain chapter of our life. We may need to relax some of the forms, so to say, but not hopefully again escapism, but just as a necessary adjustment to pay attention to other things that are urgently begging my attention. So I'm talking too generally because each one of you and each journey is unique, and it requires so many things at every moment, and we need to be sensitive to that. So apathy may be there, and I think it's good to deal with that also, because if you don't treat that properly, it can become utter rejection at one point. And many times as I speak in radical personalism, we may be rejecting things, but we don't have a clear understanding why we are rejecting what we are rejecting. And sometimes we follow things without knowing what we are following them. Sometimes we reject things without knowing why we are rejecting them. No, I know they would tell me, oh, I stopped chanting rounds because I was not feeling anything. And I totally believe them. But that's not the end of the story. The real question is why you were not feeling anything. Which was your approach to chanting? What's your conception of the name? Probably there's so much there that needs to be addressed for you to understand that it has nothing to do with the chanting. It's not that the holy name is evil or boring or whatever. But also not to put all the blame into you in a way that you go crazy, but just to take responsibility. Okay, I'm not feeling some stuff. To begin with, that's part of the journey, right? Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says in Madhurya Kadambini, Anishtita Bhajana Kriya, unstable bhakti is characterized by 6 things, and way more, but just a way of summarizing. And one of them will be all these ups and downs, right? Ghana Tarala. No, sometimes it gets very enthusiastic, sometimes it doesn't. Contraction, expansion, so to say. It's part of the journey and at least some chapter of the journey. To understand that will happen, and that's confirming that you are on the journey, right? The symptom is confirming the path. But at the same time, again, okay, what to do about it? Do I want to be apathetic? You say in English, apathetic? It's a relationship, right? Chanting or practicing is about establishing a relationship with the divine and with everything in connection to the divine. So it's always about relationship. And we know no relationship lasts if there is apathy as the predominant factor. I mean, that's the beginning of the end of the relationship. So if I feel there's apathy, okay, where is this coming from? What's behind the apathy? Why I'm feeling trigger or rejection toward this practice or this situation or whatever? Be curious, be exploratory, be playful in trying to see that. And I will say in that spirit, there is no place anymore for apathy or for even laziness. To be curious about my crisis, not just curious about intellectual inquiry and the details of the lila, but also curious about what triggers you and what lies beyond your symptoms of apathy or laziness. What's this telling me? What's the lesson here? And invoke curiosity. And someday again, there may be days that it's like, I don't want to be curious today. I just want to lie on my bed, watch Netflix, and eat potato chip for a week without interruption. Of course, that may be too much. But sometimes we feel like that. And we cannot just cancel that feeling. We cannot just brand that voice as demoniac and just bring the whip and start to whip ourselves. But we can weep about it. And it's okay, what's behind that? What's the lesson here? Why am I pathetic? I know it's not my healthiest self. I know myself. I've been in other places. Why this is coming? Okay, how do I need to honor this? I have to pay attention to this voice. What's behind that? That's apathy is not the end of the story. Laziness is not like the actual thing that's happening. Those are fingers pointing to the moon. So where's the moon? What's the message here? And you may need to sit with the apathy and with the laziness again long enough as for it to convey their letter, their message. And that will be uncomfortable or whatever. Not to stay with them forever again, but not just to get out of my life. I don't want you. You're bad. I hate you. You are not growing by doing that. You're not learning. You're not integrating anything. And probably that will be coming very soon next again with bigger strength. So trying to understand, why apathy? Why maybe it's a form of denial? Why I don't want to do that? Why I don't want to see this? What I'm afraid of? What I'm traumatized by? What I'm triggered by? Or maybe I need some rest. Maybe I chastised myself enough. I burned out. I over-demanded myself, and I'm in a stage of my life that I need to take more care of myself, to slow down a bit. And that's not laziness. So maybe I'm misdiagnosing, necessary health, self-care as laziness. Again, that's another thing, right? Because recreation, as we told, recreation doesn't mean utter distraction from the goal of your life. It's recreation. So yeah, it has a lot to do with what do we mean by each one of these words, because we all can say laziness, and we are talking in the entirely different universes. So laziness and apathy and all the things become negative and toxic when really, yeah, they are not producing something positive. When they bring darkness and lack of hope, lack of determination, enthusiasm, and the whole situation gets worse and worse. Some of the classical symptoms of tamaguna, like inertia, and it's spiraling down, so to say. I think we all have been there to know enough as when that starts to happen. And again, we do not deny it, but we try to be proactive and do something so it doesn't hit rock bottom, because there's always a rock bottom down below that. So, and what works in each case, in each situation is different. So I cannot give here like the universal formula for every single case and person and situation, but we need to do something about it. And again, some days we may need to rest a little bit more, but that doesn't mean more than that, right? And to leave the bed after enough resting may still be an effort. and there's a healthy place for effort and sacrifice. And many times we just need to have enough good reasons to live, to be willing to do those sacrifices. Now, we need to have enough good goals in our life that fill our existence with purpose and meaning, that when we are in those moments that we are struggling, we have these realities, ideals that are real, that we can offer our sacrifice to. And it will be difficult. Again, as I always say, don't wait for the word easy. Easy is never the way out. Difficult. Middle point between easy and impossible. Any genuine growth has to be difficult. And difficult is not a bad word. It's a necessary word. Challenging. Adventurous, if difficult triggers you so much. Play like invitation, whatever. Yeah. What's going on inside there, Svetadu?
Oh, that's very helpful, Maharaj. Yeah, I mean, definitely need to ask myself, whatever is going on. And as you said, it's unique for each one of us and, our own situations and, all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I will add, if you allow me, just if we feel like, okay, we've lost momentum in something, and let's say I had a good, speak about habits in life, and I had a good habit, whether it is spiritual life, sadhana standards, or time invested in something healthy for me, but for some reason I acquired some habit which became toxic and it's negative. So I want to regain that healthy habit and momentum. And again, we may not be able to just switch back into that from one day to another, and we may need to be strategic about gradually reinforcing that momentum. A very famous book about that is this book, Atomic Habits, that gives even very clear numbers, statistics about how to say counteract toxic habits and invoke new ones, but in a very gradual way. No, if you try to make the whole change from one day to another, you will fail, and you will feel a failure, and you will stop trying, and the spiral keeps going down. But if you can make a little shift in your trajectory slight enough that it's sustainable for you to keep that tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, and gradually make those slow shifts, in time that creates a world of difference. But you have to keep the atomic, that's why the name of the book, Atomic Habit, in an atomic level that's shifting. And when you look back after a year, you're like, wow. I don't know, just to give you an example. Okay, hypothetical case. Oh, someone is addicted to watching TV or social media, and they are like 15 hours with social media. And they would like to be 1 hour with social media. Well, probably if they try to be 1 hour the next day, they will end up being 17 hours with social media. They will have a cold turkey hitting, and so maybe they will say, okay, tomorrow I will do 14 hours and 59 minutes. 1 minute less. And the next day, 1 minute less. And the next day, 1 minute less. So you don't notice the 1 minute less day after day. But after a whole year, you ended up normalizing a habit that is, and you ended up consuming 1 hour per day rather than 15 hours, but changing 1 minute per day. Again, one step at a time. Like I remember, just to conclude, I don't want to go any longer, I'm already doing it. But one case, I tell this story a few times. That was like 20 years ago. No, a little less, 15. I was with a friend of mine. We were both sannyasis, monks going to these places where you will make phone calls to other people at the time that those places still existed. And we were with our robes, right? And the guy in the reception asked, like, oh, what's the meaning of those cloths? And we knew where he was going because we knew him enough to know where was the converging point of his inquiry. Oh, we're monastics, blah, blah, blah. He's like, oh, that means you don't have sex. And we were like, well, yes, that's not the main thing, but part of it is, yeah, we part of our commitments, yeah, is celibacy. And he couldn't believe us first. So he was like, but he was like, and then he said like, but when was the last time you had sex? Like he needed some reference point because it was too much for him. And my friends say like 20 years ago. So the replies were like in decades, in terms of decades, not like last week, half an hour ago, last year. And you could see, I mean, he was in so much anxiety. We were suffering for that. He was trying in his Google mind, trying to look for a point of reference for that, and he couldn't. It was so, he collapsed, and eventually he told us, I cannot spend one single day without having sex. And if I cannot have that with my couple, I need to pay someone for me to do it. So somehow my point is, he realized he had a problem by having a contrast. Of course, our case was a little bit too extreme. I accept it. But he realized it's too much. So my point with all this is, to a guy like him, I wouldn't say, you know what, become a brahmachari. That will be the solution to all your problems. I mean, I don't tell that to anyone to begin with. Even to those who come to me, I want to be a brahmachari. I try to do the most to discourage them from that, because probably most of them come for the wrong reasons. But to someone like him, probably I have to tell him, okay, let's try to have sex 6 days a week and not 7. And maybe that is too much even for him. You follow my point? And you will tell Maharaj, how you dare to advise someone to do, but try to understand the situation. Let's bring some atomic habits in, so some slight adjustment, right? So we have the same with the negative thing, like the Holocaust, the Nazi regime. It's horrible, but it never started like that. It started on a very quote unquote normal way of being, and gradually slight erosions of normalcy. Very atomic on the day-to-day, and checking how the audience responds. Oh, they're not making so much of a fuss. We can invoke another slight erosion and another and another. And then you have a Nazi Holocaust eventually. So that can happen in a negative way. Gradually, you are in hell. And you can invoke the same potential to do it gradually, and you're in heaven. So just that came in connection to what we're talking about in terms of dealing with laziness or apathy or whatever we generally acknowledge. Yeah, I need to make a good change here. Okay, make it a good change in a good way as well. Okay, I'm done for today. If you have a few more minutes, I don't want to keep you there. If you have to leave, please do it. But we'll go to one final breakout room for those who are willing to do. I won't be asking further insight after that, so we put the sharing to a close. So Bhakti Rasa will be inviting us for a few more minutes, and then we'll meet to say goodbye. Okay. Welcome back. Hoping you had a nice sharing together, and not want to take more of your time. I want to say goodbye to you. I think my mom is nearby. Why not invite her to say goodbye also? Mama? Sure, she's coming. Here's Sylvia, my mom. Más abajo está acá.
Ah, bueno, acá.
There she is. It's Sol.
Hello, Aribol, my dog. Mi amor.
Okay. So, thank you so much to all for joining. Greetings from home over here to home over there. Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Sri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol.